Hey everybody, welcome back to Tech Talk Education. In this video, I want to keep going down the road with Kali Linux, and we're going to start exploring some of the many tools that Kali includes. If you're interested in getting into cybersecurity as a SOC analyst, a cybersecurity operations center analyst, or just into cybersecurity in general, or as a pen tester, penetration tester, this is for you. You'll be able to learn what a lot of the tools are in Kali, and one of the biggest ones and one of the most effective ones is called nmap, and it is used for both passive and active reconnaissance. So let's get started. It's very interesting, and we'll get started right now. Well, okay, so you can see on my screen here that I have Kali Linux open, and I do want to let you know that I'm using my virtual hacking lab. So I also have pfSense open, and I have Metasploitable 2 running, and I will put the links in the video here so that you can go out and create that lab if you need to. I've got a couple of movies out on my channel that show you how to create this lab specifically for doing some ethical hacking, or what we more lovingly call pen testing, penetration testing. So in this case now, what I want to do is I first want to show you that we do have some machines sitting out there, and I'm going to show you a new command that's really cool. We actually have 3 machines running right now. We have pfSense, which is acting as the firewall, so that these machines are sitting inside the firewall. Then we have Kali Linux, which is inside the firewall, and we have Metasploitable 2. There's a Metasploitable 3 as well. These were deliberately unsecure Ubuntu implementations. When Metasploitable 3 has also a Windows implementation that are designed for you to be able to go in and practice your penetration testing techniques. I'm using Metasploitable 2 here, and it's very good for learning how all of these different Kali Linux tools work. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find out who's out there. Now, if I want to find out who I am, like I'm not sure what my IP address is, what I'll do is I under old conditions, I would type in ifconfig. This is an old command, and what it will do for me is show me what my internet address is. And you can see here that it's 192.168.1.100. The new command for that is IP address, so you could type that all in. You don't really need to. You could type in IP-ADDR, or you can just type in IPA, and it will yield the same information as ifconfig. So ifconfig is the old command, and I think it's slowly being deprecated, and the new command is IPA, and it could be just that it's a Debian thing, I don't know. And it shows you color codes that I'm 192.168.1.100. So we have to remember that, because we, Kali, are 1.100, at least in my case. In your case, it might be a little different. If I clear the screen now, and I'm going to type in sudo netdiscover, this is a really cool command, because what it does is it allows you to go out and find out who else is on the net. And you can see here that it's starting with the 192.168 subnet. And I've only got the 2 machines out here. This 1.1 right here, this is the pfSense box, and you get its MAC address, very cool. And then 1.101 is the Metasploitable box, you get its MAC address as well. I don't need it to go through the rest of the subnet because I don't have any other machines out there, so I'll just do a Control-C to clear, and we'll get done there. So now we know that 1.1 is pfSense, 1.100 is Kali, 1.101 is Metasploitable. So we'll clear the screen here. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to run an nmap command. So I'm going to type in sudo, and then I'm going to say nmap, and I'm going to do a bunch of stuff. So you can see that I showed you, this is from the previous movie I did for you. We're going to use this same thing here, but now what we want to do is we want to move this into a case structure. So I'm going to make a case files library for myself, so I'm going to say make dir, and I'm going to call this case_files, and I'm going to change into that folder. This would be what you'd do if you were like a penetration tester or SOC analyst. you have these different cases that you're working on, and you want to keep track of the different data that you've captured given a certain case. So in this case, I've got case files here, and I'm going to launch my nmap command. So I do a sudo nmap. Now, this is stuff from a previous movie, and we can continue to use quite a bit of that. So TAC A here. The TAC A switch here stands for aggressive. I was saying all. It actually does do a lot of stuff. And so what it's going to do here is it does operating system detection. So it's figuring out what operating system a computer is using. It does version detection, and what that means is it's going to go query all of the services that are running on that computer and find out what version of software that they're using. If you think about it, Windows has services, Linux has services, they're called daemons, Unix has services. When the services are running, they're doing a small little job of some kind. Like, for example, in Windows, the print spooler is handling sending print jobs to the printer. And you can stop and start the print spooler service and things like that. Well, so in the case of the TAC A, what we're saying is go out and detect all those services that are running, and then identify the software version that those services are using. And that's what it's doing. It also launches quite a few scripts from the nmap script engine. It's called NSE. Not all of them, because there are 1,000 of them, but it does launch certain key scripts that are important to know about. And then it also does a trace route. So it's very versatile. Now I don't need this here, this TAC SV, because this is accomplishing the same thing. So TAC A here is getting the version numbers on the services. TAC little s cap B is doing the same thing. So I'm just going to get rid of that because I really don't need that. TAC V stands for verbose. It's going to tell me everything that it's doing. Since I'm going against a local copy of Metasploitable 2 here, I really don't care how fast it runs, so I'm going to put it in insane mode. We go through 0 through 5. Normally we're going to stay kind of low because we don't want to alert IDS or IPS or firewall admins that we're trying to get some information about the system. Now this is interesting. So TAC P TAC, this stands for port, and you could say 0 through 65535. First of all, we probably don't need all of those ports. It's kind of interesting to see what ports are in the upper level, like beyond 10,000. For the most part, if you set this from say 0 to 2,000 or 0 to 3,000, I guess I'd go with 4,000, you're going to be in good shape because it's going to find most of the operational ports on computers. However, if you've got the time, you could do 0 through 65,535. That's how many ports there are on the system. These are software ports. They're logical ports. But in place of that, you can just say type TAC P TAC, and that will go and do all of the ports. Now realize that when you're running an nmap scan like this, and you're doing all ports, it's going to be fairly serious. Like you're asking for a lot of data here. And then we say TAC ON. This stands for output normal. There are 4 types of output. I'll put a little note in the video here so you know what they are. Normally what we're going to want is we're going to TAC ON, and that's just going to create a text file for us to look at. I named this initial nmap_dump.txt. You don't need to put the .txt on there. Linux doesn't care about extensions. But I've been such a long time Windows user that I like the extensions because they tell me what something is doing. And then we come out here and we grab 192.168.1.101. So that's the extent of the command. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start this command. I typed in sudo. So if I haven't done sudo before, when I was working within this terminal session, it's going to prompt me for a password. But if I keep this terminal session open, I won't get prompted for the password anymore because I've already invoked it one time. So I'll hit enter, and it starts, and you can see what the verbose thing is doing. So it's saying that it's got NSE running, it's discovered some ports, gives you lots of great information here. And what it's going to do is write out the list of everything that it accomplished, and then we can go take a look at that list. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff here happening in Metasploitable 2. I'm going to go ahead, and I was going to say I'm going to let this go ahead, and I'm going to pause it and come back to it, but we'll see how it does. Now this SYN stealth scan we talked about in the last movie, and you remember that we have the three-way handshake. So I want to go out to a computer and I want to connect to it. I'm going to send out what's called a synchronized packet. Everything is done in packets. So we're sending, you can think of it as an envelope with a message in it. Well, the envelope that I'm sending is saying, I want to synchronize with you, Mr. or Mrs. Server. And the server says, okay, yeah, that's cool, you can synchronize with me. It sends me back what is called an acknowledgement, an ACK packet. And then I have to ACK the ACK packet. So it's a three-way thing, SYN, ACK, ACK. And this is called a SYN stealth scan. What does that mean? Well, it means that we are going to pass the SYN into it, and we're just going to back off. We're not going to listen. We're not going to acknowledge. So this is pretty cool. We like this, that it's doing this SYN stealth scan. I am going to go ahead and put you on pause because these scripts take a minute to run. So I'll come back to you when we're done with all of the scripts, and I want to show you the output there. Okay, so we're all done here. What we can do is we could scroll up through here. I'm just using my scroll wheel now, and we can take a look and see what we've got here. And it's a big verbose output here. The TAC-B switch is what was doing that. So it's very verbose. It's giving you lots of good information. It says it's loading the nmap script engine. It's running 156 scripts. There are 396 currently in the library, so this is, I don't know, what, about half of them. And so let's keep going down through here. So I'll click an insertion point here. It's initiating NSE, completed NSE, la-da-da. It scans and finds open ports. Now this is where you have to know probably at least, I don't know, the first, I would look at the ports between 0 and probably 4,000, and not all of those are important ports, but you need to know about quite a few of them. Port 22 is SSH, so that's really juicy. We want to have that. Now it's saying TCP here. What does TCP mean? That's Transmission Control Protocol, and it means that it is a connection-based protocol. I like to kid with people, so I would tell my students, so it's you on the phone with your mom, and the NSA is listening in, the National Security Agency. It's a joke. But TCP means that you're connected. So it's you and your mom talking to one another. That's what TCP is doing. The other side of it is UDP, which is we just throw the packets out the door and they get to their destination. They're reassembled and read. And there's no connection going on there. So all of these are TCP packets. And here's the DNS. You can see all of them. Here's FTP. This is very bad juju. FTP is bad juju. Port 23 is bad juju because that's Telnet. Port 25 is SMTP. Port 80 is HTTP. This is websites. You get the idea. So there's a ton of ports. Not all of them are important to you to memorize. Some ports are leveraged by administrators to use for a different purpose. For example, we're looking at port 80 here. Port 80 is open. So that is open on most web servers. But what if I'm inside a company, a large company, and they have their own little website for just inside the company? So it's not the internet, it's called an intranet. And intranets are very often mapped to port 8080. So, there are people that can make use of different ports here. So you don't need to memorize necessarily all of them. And you can see when they combine things like this, 8787, 6667, 6697, these are maybe ports that were invented on the fly. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. Here's port 2121. That seems to me like that's probably a fake FTP port of some kind. You see, you get the idea there. So you need to know the ports. Some of the ports you're not going to care about. Like I don't know about 52434. So what I would do is I would jump online and I would query what is commonly out on port 52434 to find out what it's doing. A lot of these you have to memorize. Like I would say the first 100, the big guys, like 22 and 53 and 443 is secure HTTP, things like that. And if you go out and look for, you Google a listing of top TCP/IP ports, you'll get a listing that will show you what the most common ones are. So these are like kind of one-off little things that we would want to look at and see what they're doing, what this is about. Then it says we completed the stealth scan, so we did connect with it. We started the three-way handshake, but we said, no, I don't want to acknowledge that. Then we started the service scan. It found 30 services that are running on the box. And it says, then it's initiating OS detection. Starts NSE. You can always recognize NSE. I'll show you how. It found an illegal port command somewhere when it was doing FTP bounce. Completed NSE. And then here's what NSE looks like. So you can't miss NSE because it puts out a name header up here at port 21 TCP. It found OpenFTP, and this is the software version, FTP, VSFTPD 2.3.4. So that's a company that manufactures, they're still around, they manufacture FTP software that is installed on this computer. It's listening on port 21. We say that I'm listening on a port for some activity, and it's handling the file transfer protocol, FTP protocol here. And then what's happening here is these little bars right here are telling you that this is a result of the NSE script that ran to identify this. So it found that it could do an anonymous FTP login is allowed. That's very bad juju. It connected, it logged in as FTP. There's not a session bandwidth limit. That's even more bad juju. So I could stay on in perpetuity. And then it gives me a header here, VSFTPD 2.3.4, secure, fast, and stable. Yeah, it's not secure. It's been hacked. So port 22 SSH is open. It tells you that it's open SSH 4.7. It's running Debian 8 Ubuntu. So now we know that Metasploitable 2 is running Debian Ubuntu Linux, and I think it must be version 8. And the version of OpenSSH is 4.7 P1. And it brings you back some SSH keys, which are very interesting. This has to do with public key infrastructure, which is a bigger topic than this movie. But this is a hash key, and it's running the DSA algorithm. There's also an RSA algorithm for which a key was generated. And this is the length of the key. So you've got a 1024-bit key, you've got a 2048-bit key. That's a very, very strong key. And so knowing these keys, you might be able to try and brute force attack them, for example. So that might be something you might be interested in doing. At minimum, we think that you can get into SSH because it's open SSH. So that might be something we would try. Now, let's define active recon or passive recon. I'm doing passive recon right now. I am not interrupting this computer in any way, with the exception of I'm querying the machine to find out what's going on with it. An active recon would be where I'm dropping off or I'm trying to exploit certain holes in the system to be able to get more information out of it. Now the question is, are you allowed to passively perform passive recon on a device? And the answer is yes. However, if you're going to do some work, like you're going to be a penetration tester and you're going to do cloud, you're going to try and go get some cloud implementations. Let's say you hire on with a company to do a pen test, and they're like, oh, well, a lot of our stuff is on Amazon Web Services, or it's on, Microsoft Azure. And you're getting into that. You have to contact AWS and Microsoft and say, look, we're going to do a penetration test here. What can we do and what can't we do? Now, AWS will allow certain things, but it's got to be against your installation on AWS. You are not allowed to go out and do a passive scan on AWS servers. So there's a difference there. And I just want to caution you that passive recon is fine. Joe's Barbershop, passive recon is going to yield some results, and no one's going to really know. But if you start doing passive recon in an area where They have quite a few security engineers. They're watching this. They're getting information from the logs and from alerts and things like that. You could be detected, and you might get in trouble for that. So you want to be careful with that, especially with Active Recon. You want to have permission to do these things, I guess is what I'm trying to describe. I do not give you permission to go out and attack Joe's barbershop. I don't think that's correct, legal, or ethical, but it is perfectly fine to scan it and see what's open. For example, let's say that you scan Joe's barbershop and you found port 23 open. That's telnet. That's very, very bad juju. A bad guy, a bad hacker could get in there immediately using telnet because it's completely clear text and open. So you would want to tell Joe's barbershop, hey man, you've got this port open and we need to close it. Could make you some money. There are people that make money doing this kind of thing. They're called bug bounty. They're actually looking for bugs in code. But the point here that I'm trying to make is, if you found a bug, you might, contact that person and say, look, this is unstable. We need to correct this. They might hire you to do the gig. So that's that there. This is SSH. And then here's some, it found SSL open. So this is secure socket layer. This is for the web, and it found some ciphers that it's using. This is a hash. MD5 is called a hashing algorithm. It's very well known. It's been around a long time. You should probably research MD5 to find out how it works. And you get a certificate. So when we're working with on the web and we're doing secure web transactions, we're going to get a certificate from the web server that says, I am the genuine real deal, and here's my certificate. And it's called a CA, a certificate authority. And so it's telling you here that it's got a certificate here. This is what it looks like right here. Here's the cert. So you should read up on CAs, certificate authorities. There are companies that make a living selling certificates to other companies to guarantee that, yes, you did indeed contact Disney.com. And I get this cert, and I know that I am indeed looking at Disney.com. And this, too, has to do with your security surfing the web, but also the security of the company understanding who you are. And look at this province name. There is no such thing outside U.S. So, yeah, that's kind of a joke there, I think. Then you've got some other stuff happening here. Public key type is RSA. The bits is 1024. That's a very strong encryption. They're also using SHA encryption with RSA, so that's pretty strong. There's an MD5 hash you could try and undo. There's a SHA-1 hash you could try and undo. And it's worth your while to understand MD5 and SHA-1. These are hashing algorithms. They're very, very interesting, especially SHA, secure hashing algorithm. We're up to SHA-256 now, so this is a little bit back in the weeds there, back in the old days. There's some SMT commands that you could pass in. Port 53 is open. It's using some software called ISC bind 9.4.2. So this is affiliated with Ubuntu. Port 80 is open. It gives you a header here, and it's telling you that it's running Apache web server, which is a very, very good product. But it's way back in the old days, 2.2.8. I don't know the exact stats, but I would say that Apache is probably running on 70% of the world's web servers. It's very highly thought of. Microsoft has a product called Internet Information Server, which is a different web server product, and there are lots of web servers running IIS as well, so it's worth knowing about. Then you're getting the headers off of the traffic off of port 80. Here's RPC, remote procedure call, and it's telling you the ports that it's using. And look, this is where all of the weirdo port numbers come in that have been leveraged for use with RPC, so it's worth your while knowing about how RPC works. Is it secure? Can it get into machines using RPC? This, when you see this 139 and 445, and you see the term here, NetBIOS, let me give you a little bit of history here, because this is an interesting story. Back when Microsoft was getting going in networking, they're like, hey, we got all these great Microsoft computers. we want to begin to network them. They created what was called the Network Basic Input-Output System. It's called NetBIOS. It's still around, and the idea here is that we apply a name to a computer. So all of the computers in a Microsoft Windows environment have a name, and it used to be called the NetBIOS name. It's not called that anymore, but I think it's 15 characters you're limited to or something like that. But the idea here is when you see NetBIOS, you know that you are talking about Microsoft SMB. It stands for Server Message Block. Server Message Block right there. That is a Microsoft invention that has been ported over to Linux. It's still in use. People have hacked the death out of SMB. You can tell it's running in Linux because it says SMB daemon. This D stands for daemon. So this is actually baked into Ubuntu. Furthermore, when SMB was ported over to Linux, we gave it this fun term, samba, which is a Latin dance. That's just a fun name. Samba kind of rhymed with SMB. That's where it came from. So when you see NetBIOS, you're thinking Microsoft right away. You're thinking Samba. And the idea is that I can share files on this particular server and let you come get these files using Samba. So it's a way of going across the network and getting files from a different computer. And it's using Samba 3x. Now, one of the things you need to know about NetBIOS is we are always in either a workgroup or a domain. Those are the two choices you have in Windows. And in this case, it's saying we're in the default workgroup. That is the default setting. So you install Windows on your home computer, you're going to join workgroup by default unless you tell it that you want to be in a different workgroup. And then if I'm at work and I'm on a Windows Active Directory domain, I'm going to have a domain there instead of being inside a workgroup. So it is very much worth your while to understand how the NetBIOS and Samba and SMB work, because they have had the death hacked out of them. There's a lot of open doors. And I'm not saying now. Microsoft does a great job in terms of security. So I'm not bad-mouthing Microsoft at all, nor am I bad-mouthing Linux. What I am saying is that if you're back on an earlier version of an SMB daemon, it's possible that you could get into it. And so port 139 and 445 are open. 512 is open. 513, it's running an OpenBSD login. This is called remote login daemon here. So I could try and get into port 513. There's some Java running out here. Network file system is running. It's using remote procedure call, whatever that number is, FTP. Now, see, we talked about that. Somebody invented a port 2121. This was made up. Normally, FTP listens on port 21, but maybe we had an intranet and we're saying, hey, you know what? We want to give these people the ability to come and get files off of the Linux server, and we want to do this locally on the intranet, so we're going to open up 2121 and allow it to be an FTP server. And it's using a different version. So it's not VSFTPD, it is Pro FTPD. This is a daemon here, 1.3.1. This thing is running a couple of databases. One is called MySQL, version 5.05. Very, very popular open source database product, listening on port 3306. And you can see the nmap ran a scan on this to get some MySQL info, and it got a lot of good stuff out here. Dist CCD is running. There is another production database server running. It's called PostgreSQL 8.3.0, and so that would be worth looking at to see if we could hack into that thing. Lots of information about it. Look at all the stuff you can get off of it. Here's VNC. Now this is very interesting. If I'm in the Windows world, you can practice this yourself. You hit your magnifier tool and search for remote. And what will come up is what's called the remote desktop connection. That is a client utility that allows you to remote into another computer. We're using what's called the remote desktop protocol. And And if you find that open, I think it's 36, I had to look it up, it's port 3389. That's a good thing. You'll know that, well, I can try RDP from my Windows box. It's been ported over to Linux, so Linux supports port 3389 and the remote desktop protocol. VNC is older than that, so it's worth your while to go out and study VNC a little bit. It's fascinating. It too is a client utility, and what happens is you launch VNC and it connects to the remote computer and shows you the desktop on the computer. And this is version protocol 3.3. It's astonishing to see it working. This actually works on Metasploitable pretty well. So VNC is open on port 5900. Internet Relay Chat is open. You can see that we've got a chat server open here. We might be able to exploit that. It's listening on port 6667. If I'm being honest with you, I don't know what X11 does. I would have to go out and research that. Here's another Internet Relay Chat that's open. Look at this. It's using Unreal IRCD, so 6667 and 6697 are open. 8009 is running Apache Java Server, version 1.3, so that's back in the day a little bit. And it's running a thing called Apache Tomcat. Now, we talked about Apache Web Server. That's a terrific product. Well, I gave you the wrong information. I just queried this, and it says Apache looks like it's about 28.7, 29% of web servers are running Apache Web Server. IIS is only running 4.4%. Now, what is Tomcat? So Tomcat is a web server product. This goes back a ways, and the idea is that we've got this Java server sitting out there. It's going to serve up web apps, and Tomcat is the thing that's going to do that. So it's worth your while knowing about how Tomcat works, and it's listening on port 8180. And let's see what else we've got. We've got some other stuff. Just kind of looking here to see what I've got. Not taking too long. Now, here is your trace route here that ran, and it's saying, oh, I'm only one hop away, which is true because I'm on the local network. If I had to go out to, say, Miami or Tokyo or somewhere, and I had to find a machine, traceroute would have, dozens of listings of the different routers that it went through in order to get to that site. In this case, my network hop is only one machine away because I'm all on the same local network. TCP sequence prediction difficulty 197, good luck. I don't know what that means. I'd have to research that. And then here's some more scripting stuff. So it ran SMB, it found the names, found the work group. We talked about the work group, OS discovery. It says it's Unix, and it's running Samba 3.0.2. So you get the idea, and then there's your trace route, and NSC stops. So that, my friends, is a thorough nmap scan. Now if I do an ls, I'm going to clear the screen and do an ls. We save this thing off as a dump, so we can go keep that. Why is that important? Well, you want to run this thing one time, and then what you want to have it do is pipe everything into a text file. Like, it's great to do the verbose thing, so you can go scroll up through it and look through it and see what it's saying. But now I've got it so, tomorrow morning I don't have to rerun the scan. I can go look at the scan in a text version. And an easy way to do that is to just cat it. So you cat init nmap, nmap underscore dump dot text, and it will do exactly the same thing for you. So it's going to print out what it found. That, my friends, is a passive nmap scan against Metasploitable 2. And pen testers will do this. So the concept is we've got a machine, we've discovered a machine out there for the client. We're being hired to do this penetration testing. We go out and we find this machine, we scan it, we find these things open, we do more research, and then in your case files would be your notes on what you found, what you discovered when you were doing research about it, what you know about it. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go down the road, hacking into Metasploitable, because first of all, Metasploitable 2 is a great way to learn these tools. Very, very effective way to get at these tools. Second of all, it teaches you about some of the vulnerabilities that you might be looking for and how to spot those vulnerabilities. So it's really good stuff. Well, I hope you enjoyed this movie. If you liked it, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to grow the channel. Tell your friends about it. You're welcome to leave a comment. You guys have been leaving me some really cool comments. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And then I will talk to you in the next movie, and we'll go down this Kali Linux road a little bit more. Have a great day. Bye-bye.